All right, for more, let's bring in the anchor of Fox News Sunday, Chris Wallace. So, Chris, I went and had a brain room look at some of the things that this administration has done with regard to Russia. We saw in August of last year, President Trump signed into law the Countering Russia Influence on Europe and Eurasia Act of 2017, codifying sanctions on Russia provided for in existing Ukraine-related and cyber-related executive orders. We also saw the administration begin to scale back our visa services to Russians. That affected business travelers, tourists, and students. So this isn't the first thing. Is it fair for critics to look at this president and say he's done nothing with regard to Russia?
Well, just from what you've said, no, it's not fair to say he's done nothing, but I think there is legitimate criticism that he could have done more.
I have a longer list, but we only have so much time.
But look, if the fact that, as you pointed out, that these sanctions for meddling in the election were passed by Congress overwhelmingly in July, last July, what is that, about 9 months ago, and the president only enacted them today, raises the question, what took him so long to do it? And even in his remarks that you just played with him in the Oval Office, he's talking about, well, it looks like much tougher rhetoric coming from the UN ambassador, Nikki Haley, from the president's own spokeswoman, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. But when the president talks himself, there's always a kind of equivocation. It looks like he's not definite, he doesn't condemn, and that's notable.
Well, is it also a part, and I'm just asking, I mean, I would want to ask the president this question too. He is a negotiator. And is it also part from that perspective of, okay, everybody can come and do whatever they want, you might want to leave the door open. He potentially could sit down with Kim Jong-un. And he did some of those same types of things with North Korea, kind of carrot and stick sort of stuff. Is that in play here, do you think?
My feeling about Kim Jong-un is, if anything, the success, and I think you have to put that in quotes until we see what happens, with Kim Jong-un was as a result of exactly the opposite, which is very tough rhetoric. I mean, he talked about Rocket Man, and he talked about fire and fury, and made it clear we were not going to stand for what he was doing. Now, I'm not comparing North Korea to Russia. Obviously, it's a much more complicated relationship and a much bigger relationship with Russia. But I think if you look at this president over the course, I mean, he was very slow to admit that the Russians even meddled in the election. He was slow to implement the sanctions. And even today, although, yes, he has imposed these sanctions, the rhetoric, you're hearing much more from the White House, you're hearing much more from the UN ambassador than you're hearing from the president himself. And this is a president who has no problem talking tough when he wants to.
Well, we're going to need Russia and China to deal with North Korea. So I'm going to give you a little bit more of that list. The United States on August 22nd last summer imposed new North Korea-related sanctions targeting Chinese and Russian firms and individuals for supporting the North. So, I mean, you do need Russia in the scenario. But I want to get back to where critics have hit this president and how this answers back. What are you learning in terms of, you heard Democrat Chuck Schumer saying that this just proves that the Robert Mueller investigation is not a witch hunt. How is that so?
Well, I think that the key there is not to say, and there certainly still has been no evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, but the point is that Mueller just indicted a number of people for meddling in the election. Forget about the question of collusion. And it's a number of those people who have been sanctioned now by the president. So in sanctioning him, the president is basically saying Mueller was right, not about collusion, but about Russian meddling in the election.
What can you tell us, Chris Wallace, about looking ahead to November? I've talked with lawmakers. We just had on Representative Mark Walker. I mean, that's the next ground, really, that you could see Russia meddling in all of this. And we've got to start to turn forward now and advance this.
Well, that's right. And that's another area where I think some people are concerned about the president's Russia policy. You had the head of the National Security Agency, and he's also the head of our cyber force unit, Admiral Mike Rogers, and he said he had never gotten, in all the time he's been there, and he was there from the start of the Trump administration, any specific orders to do anything extra to try to fight back against Russian meddling. And that's one of the concerns, is that let's forget about, for the moment, about the 2016 election. You're exactly right. Let's focus on 2018. Has the administration done anything to protect us from the same kind of meddling we had in 2016 this coming November? And the answer is not really very much.
Well, diplomacy experts are telling me that what Theresa May did in the UK by expelling some Russians was really nothing. And what we've done is a stronger position, and we know that the president said he talked with the prime minister this week about the poisoning and other things, I would imagine. So we'll cover the news as it happens. Chris Wallace, thank you. I'm going to brag about you now.
Good.
This
Thank
week.
you.